So there I was, Jake Morrison, professional space janitor and amateur disaster magnet, pushing my cart down Corridor 7 Alpha of Research Station Kepler 7. You know, living the dream. Nothing says I peaked in high school quite like mopping alien goo off bulkheads at 3 in the morning while questioning every life choice that led to this moment. The thing about working the night shift on a xenobiology research station is that everyone assumes you're too stupid to accidentally stumble into anything important. They're usually right, but that particular Tuesday the universe decided to prove everyone wrong in the most spectacular way possible. I was humming some ancient Earth song, probably off-key, definitely annoying, when I noticed that the door to Habitat 7 was slightly ajar. Now Habitat 7 had more warning signs than a nuclear waste facility, and twice as many skull symbols. But here's the thing about being chronically underpaid and overworked. Your decision-making skills tend to suffer. Probably just needs a quick sweep, I muttered to myself. Because apparently talking to yourself is the first sign of space madness, and I was already 3 symptoms deep. What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words right there. I pushed the cart through the door, and immediately knew I'd made a mistake. The habitat was enormous. Like football stadium enormous. With these weird crystalline formations jutting out everywhere. The air hummed with some kind of energy that made my teeth itch. And there was this, imagine wet rocks mixed with ozone and just a hint of you're about to die horribly. That's when I saw it. Vex, though I didn't know its name yet, was about 12 feet of pure crystalline death, with more edges than a geometry textbook and eyes that glowed like angry stars. It looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a chandelier and given the result a really bad attitude and an appetite for violence. The moment our eyes met, something happened. Not love at first sight, more like predator identifies next meal at first sight. I felt this weird pressure in my head, like someone was rummaging around in my brain with oven mitts. And suddenly I knew, with absolute certainty, that this thing had just marked me as prey. Oh, I said eloquently. Oh no. Vex tilted its head, and let me tell you, when something that could bench press a shuttle tilts its head at you, it's not cute. It's terrifying. It made this sound, somewhere between a pore and a glacier cracking, and took a step forward. I did what any reasonable person would do in that situation. I panicked, flailed backwards, and managed to hit every emergency button on my cart simultaneously. Alarms started blaring, emergency lights began flashing, and somewhere a computerized voice began cheerfully announcing that Habitat 7 was now in full lockdown mode. The blast doors slammed shut with a finality that suggested the universe had a sense of humor and it was twisted. So there we were, me, Jake Morrison, space janitor extraordinaire, and Vex, apex predator and new owner of one very unfortunate human. The predator looked around at the sealed habitat, then back at me, and I swear I could see confusion in those glowing eyes. Like it was thinking, I marked this thing as prey, but it's so pathetically helpless that I'm not sure it even counts as food. Welcome to my life. Now, I've never been claimed as prey before, but I had some expectations about how the whole process would go. You know, chase scene, dramatic struggle, maybe some heroic last words before the inevitable. What I didn't expect was for my apex predator to just stand there staring at me like I was a puzzle it couldn't solve. Vex took another step forward and I took 2 steps back, which put me right up against the wall. Smooth move, Jake. Really playing it cool there. Look, I said, because apparently my survival instinct involves trying to negotiate with something that probably considered talking prey a novelty. I think there's been a misunderstanding here. I'm not really prey material. I mean, look at me. I gestured to myself, which was admittedly not a great sales pitch. 5'9", soft around the middle, with the muscle tone of overcooked pasta. I was basically fast food with legs. Vex made that glacier cracking sound again, and suddenly I was getting images in my head. Not words, just pictures. Me running, me hiding, me doing various prey-like activities with what I could only describe as breathtaking incompetence. Yeah, okay, I get it, I said. You've marked me as prey. But here's the thing. I'm really bad at being prey. Like embarrassingly bad. You're going to be so disappointed. To prove my point, I tried to demonstrate my superior speed by sprinting across the habitat. I made it about 10 feet before tripping over my own feet and face planting into one of the crystalline formations. The impact rang like a bell, and I saw stars. Actual stars, not the philosophical kind about reaching for your dreams. When my vision cleared, Vex was looming over me with what I swear looked like concern. It made a different sound this time, more like a confused rumble, and gently, and I mean gently, helped me to my feet with one massive clawed appendage. See? I said, swaying slightly. Told you. Worst prey ever. Over the next few hours, and yes, hours, because apparently lockdown procedures on research stations are designed by people who never considered that someone might accidentally trap themselves with a crystalline death machine. I tried various escape attempts. Attempt number 1. I tried to squeeze through the ventilation grate. Got stuck halfway through and had to be extracted by Vex, who seemed genuinely puzzled by my poor understanding of basic physics and spatial relationships. Attempt number 2. I attempted to communicate with the door controls using my janitor's access codes. Turns out, maintenance level 3 clearance doesn't override imminent death scenario protocols. Who knew? Attempt number 3. I tried to hide behind my cart. Yes, a cart that was approximately 1/10 my size. Vex found this so confusing that it actually sat down, well, folded its crystalline bulk down, and just watched me like I was the most fascinating thing it had ever encountered. That's when I started noticing the weird behavior. Every time I hurt myself during these escape attempts, and trust me, I hurt myself a lot, Vex would make this concerned rumbling sound, and check on me. When I got thirsty, it somehow produced water from somewhere in the habitat. When I got tired, it arranged some of the softer crystalline formations into what could generously be called a bed. You know, I said during hour 4 of my captivity, sitting on my improvised crystal bed while Vex loomed nearby like the world's most attentive gargoyle. For an apex predator, you're really bad at the whole eating your prey thing. Vex tilted its head again, and I got another burst of image. This time they were different. Not me running or hiding, but me being carefully protected. Me being kept safe. Me being treasured. Oh no, I said, as the horrible realization dawned on me. Oh no. No. You don't think I'm prey anymore, do you? You think I'm a... The pleased rumbling sound Vex made in response pretty much confirmed my worst fears. I wasn't prey. I was worse than prey. I was worse than prey. I was a beloved pet that was too stupid to survive on its own. 8 hours into my new career as an alien pet, the cavalry finally arrived, and by cavalry I mean Commander Rex Hawthorne and his security team, armed with enough firepower to level a small moon and absolutely zero sense of humor about the situation. The blast doors finally cycled open with a hydraulic hiss that sounded like freedom, followed immediately by the distinctive whine of plasma rifles charging up. Through the doorway marched Rex, 6 feet of military precision wrapped in enough body armor to stop a meteor, followed by a squad of security personnel who looked like they'd rather be literally anywhere else. Step away from the civilian, Rex barked in that voice that suggested he'd been practicing intimidating commands in the mirror since he was 12. Now here's where things got interesting. The moment Rex and his team appeared, Vex went from protective pet owner to absolutely enraged guardian of precious cargo in about half a second. It rose to its full 12-foot height, spread what I now realized were some kind of crystalline wing structures, and made a sound like a freight train colliding with a thunderstorm. Wait, I shouted, scrambling to my feet and doing my best to position myself between Vex and the security team. Everyone just calm down, this is all a big misunderstanding. Rex lowered his rifle slightly, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and what might have been admiration. Jake Morrison, the janitor. That's me, I said, trying to sound casual while a 12-foot apex predator loomed protectively behind me. And before you ask, no, I did not tame this thing. I am not some kind of alien whisperer. I am definitely not in control of this situation. But Rex wasn't listening to my perfectly reasonable explanation. His eyes had taken on that look that people get when they're witnessing something they think is historic. Incredible, he breathed. You've actually bonded with Specimen 7. Specimen 7. I glanced back at Vex, who was still making threatening noises at the security team. Its name is Vex. The moment I said the name, Vex made a pleased rumbling sound and nuzzled my shoulder with its massive head, which, let me tell you, is not an experience you ever get used to. It's like being affectionately headbutted by a living chandelier. Rex's jaw actually dropped. It responds to the name you gave it. Morrison, do you have any idea what you've accomplished here? Yeah, I said. I've ruined my life in the most spectacular way possible. That's when Mira Costas pushed through the security cordon, tablet in hand and eyes bright with the kind of scientific excitement that usually leads to very bad things happening to very unfortunate people. Mira was the station's lead xenobiologist, which meant she was brilliant, curious, and had absolutely no sense of self-preservation when it came to studying dangerous alien life forms. This is unprecedented, she said, her scanner beeping frantically as she pointed it at Vex. The behavioral modifications, the protective instincts, the apparent emotional attachment. Jake, you've created the first recorded case of interspecies bonding with a Class A apex predator. I didn't create anything, I protested. I fell down, and apparently that counts as bonding behavior in crystal alien culture. Vex chose that moment to demonstrate its protective instincts by stepping forward and positioning itself between me and Mira's scanner. The growl it produced made the deck plates vibrate, and Mira's scanner started displaying error messages. Fascinating, Mira murmured, completely ignoring the fact that she was now within easy striking distance of something that could cut her in half without trying. It's treating you as its territory. No, more than that, It's treating you as something precious that needs to be protected at all costs. Great, I said. Just great. I've gone from prey to pet, to precious cargo. This day just keeps getting better. Rex was talking into his comm unit, using words like situation contained and unexpected development, and we're going to need a bigger incident report. Meanwhile, Vex had apparently decided that the growing crowd of people constituted a threat and was methodically positioning itself to have the best possible defensive angle. The question now, Mira said, still taking readings and apparently oblivious to the fact that her subject was getting increasingly agitated, is whether this bond can be safely severed or if you two are now permanently linked. I felt that familiar pressure in my head again, and suddenly I was getting images from Vex. Not the confused prey hunting images from before, but something that looked disturbingly like a mental map of the station with little markers showing potential threats to my safety. Oh no, I said, as the horrible realization hit me. It's not just protective. It's turned me into its entire reason for existing. The pleased, possessive rumble Vex made in response pretty much confirmed my worst fears. I wasn't just a pet anymore. I was a beloved pet that had somehow become the center of an apex predator's universe. And judging by the way Rex and Mira were looking at me, that was apparently a problem for everyone involved. 3 days later, I was sitting in conference room Alpha 7, which had been hastily converted into what could generously be called a diplomatic meeting space. Around the table sat representatives from the Galactic Council, the Human Colonial Authority, the Xenobiological Ethics Committee, and approximately 12 other organizations whose names were longer than most novels. I'd like to say I was handling this with dignity and grace, but mostly I was trying not to hyperventilate while Vex loomed behind my chair like the world's most intimidating bodyguard. The precedent is clear, announced Councillor Threshtak, a being that looked like someone had crossed an octopus with a briefcase and given it a law degree. Under Section 47B of the Interspecies Bonding Accords, ratified in 2030-87, any sentient being that has formed a recognized bond with another sentient being cannot be separated without mutual consent. But I didn't consent to any of this. I protested. I was just trying to clean a hallway. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka, representing humanity's interests with all the enthusiasm of someone who'd drawn the short straw, gave me a look that suggested I should stop making her job harder. Mr. Morrison, the legal reality is that you and Vex have formed what the Council recognizes as a symbiotic partnership. Symbiotic? I laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. Lady, this thing thinks I'm a houseplant that needs constant supervision. Yesterday it brought me what I think was supposed to be food, but it looked like it had been pre-chewed by something with way too many teeth. Vex made an offended rumbling sound and projected images of the perfectly good nutrition paste it had thoughtfully prepared for me. The fact that it resembled baby food was apparently beside the point. Dr. Costas, who had been documenting every moment of this nightmare for posterity, leaned forward with barely contained excitement. The psychological profile is unprecedented. Vex has completely restructured its behavioral patterns around ensuring Jake's welfare. It's treating him as what we might call an apex companion. Something so valuable that protecting it becomes the primary directive. Which brings us to the legal implications. Councillor Threshtak continued, shuffling through documents with several tentacles simultaneously. As Vex's chosen companion, Morrison is now entitled to diplomatic immunity, protective custody provisions, and full species-appropriate accommodations. Species-appropriate accommodations? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. You'll need to be housed together, Ambassador Tanaka explained, looking like she wanted to be literally anywhere else. The psychological trauma of separation could cause Vex to become problematic. Commander Hawthorne, who had been silent through most of this bureaucratic circus, finally spoke up. Define problematic. Dr. Costas consulted her tablet. Based on our behavioral analysis, separating them could trigger what we're calling protective rage syndrome. Essentially, Vex would consider the entire station a threat to Jake's safety and respond accordingly. Respond how? Rex asked, though his expression suggested he already knew and didn't like the answer. Total destructive rampage until the perceived threat is eliminated and Jake is recovered, Mira said cheerfully. We're talking about complete structural collapse of any facility holding Jake without Vex present. I put my head in my hands. So let me get this straight. I can't be separated from my crystal stalker because it'll destroy everything within a 5-mile radius if it thinks I'm in danger. That's a gross oversimplification, Dr. Costas said. It's more like a 10-mile radius. The room fell silent except for the gentle humming sound Vex made when it was content. Which it apparently was because I was sitting still and not doing anything it considered dangerous. Like breathing without supervision. Councillor Threshtak cleared several throats simultaneously. There is, however, some good news. As Vex's chosen companion, you're now classified as a diplomatic entity. This comes with a substantial salary increase, full medical benefits, and hazard pay. How substantial? I asked, because even in the middle of a complete life meltdown, I was still chronically underpaid. Ambassador Tanaka consulted her tablet and winced slightly. Your new annual salary is considerable. Let's just say you'll never have to worry about money again. And the hazard pay? Rex asked. Triple overtime, permanent danger bonus, and a pension that kicks in immediately because frankly we're not sure how long this arrangement will last before something catastrophic happens. Vex chose that moment to demonstrate its affection by gently patting my head with one massive clawed appendage. To everyone else in the room, it probably looked endearing. To me it felt like being petted by a friendly bulldozer. So I'm stuck. I'm permanently attached to a crystalline death machine that thinks I'm the most important thing in the universe. I can't go anywhere without it, and if anyone tries to separate us, it'll level half the station. Yes, Ambassador Tanaka said, but you're very well compensated for the inconvenience. And, Dr. Costas added brightly, you're making history. First recorded human crystal apex predator bonding. You'll be in text. I looked around the room at all the faces staring at me expectantly, then back at Vex, who was radiating contentment like a 12-foot space heater. I used to just mop floors, I said quietly. Vex made a sympathetic rumbling sound and projected an image of me sitting safely in what appeared to be a very luxurious habitat while it stood guard nearby. Apparently I wasn't even going to be mopping floors anymore. 2 weeks into my new life as the galaxy's most reluctant diplomatic entity, I'd settled into what I generously called a routine. Wake up in my upgraded quarters. And by upgraded, I mean they'd knocked out 3 walls to accommodate Vex's bulk, and installed furniture that could withstand being accidentally crushed by a concerned apex predator. Eat breakfast while Vex watched every bite to make sure I was getting proper nutrition. Try to do some actual work while Vex rearranged my office furniture to optimize my safety and comfort. It was, honestly, the most boring existence imaginable. Right up until the moment it absolutely wasn't. I was sitting at my new desk, Senior Interspecies Relations Coordinator, according to the nameplate that someone with a sense of humor had made for me, trying to fill out paperwork while Vex helpfully organized my filing system by some crystalline logic I couldn't begin to understand. That's when the alarm started. Not the gentle someone spilled coffee in the wrong corridor alarms, but the full-throated everyone is probably going to die horribly klaxons that made your teeth hurt and your survival instincts scream. The emergency comm system crackled to life with Commander Hawthorne's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. All personnel to emergency stations. We have hostile borders. Repeat. We have hostile borders. This is not a drill. Vex went from helpful filing assistant to eminent death incarnate so fast I got whiplash just watching the transformation. Every crystalline edge suddenly looked razor sharp, its eyes blazed like angry stars, and the sound it made was like a landslide having an argument with a hurricane. Jake Morrison and Vex to the command center immediately. Rex's voice continued over the comm. We need you. We need us. I squeaked, my voice climbing several octaves. Rex, I'm a janitor. A very well-paid janitor now, but still a janitor. I don't do space battles. But Vex was already moving, and when 12 feet of crystalline apex predator decides it's time to go somewhere, you don't really get a vote in the matter. One massive clawed appendage scooped me up with the casual ease of someone picking up a briefcase, and suddenly I was being carried through the corridors of Kepler 7, like the world's most terrified accessory. We reached the command center just as the blast doors were cycling shut behind a squad of what could generously be called very bad people. Space pirates, from the look of them, all mismatched armor, illegal weapon modifications and the kind of facial hair that suggested poor life choices. Their leader, a scarred woman with more cybernetic implants than original parts, was gesturing with a plasma rifle that looked like it could punch holes through small moons. Nobody move and nobody dies. We're here for the research data, and anything else worth stealing. That's when she noticed Vex. To her credit, she didn't immediately run screaming. She did, however, take several steps backward and raise her rifle, which was about as effective as threatening a mountain with a harsh word. What the hell is that thing? She demanded. That, Rex said with the tone of someone who was about to enjoy himself, is our Apex Predator response team. The pirate leader looked confused. Response team? It's just one creature and some guy it's carrying like a handbag. Actually, I called out from my position tucked securely in Vex's protective embrace. I think I'm more like emotional support cargo at this point. That's when everything went sideways. The pirates, being pirates and therefore not particularly bright, decided that the best response to encountering an apex predator was to shoot it. The plasma bolts hit Vex's crystalline hide and scattered like angry fireflies, doing about as much damage as you'd expect from trying to hurt a mountain with harsh language. Vex's response was immediate and absolute. It set me down carefully behind the command console, and I mean carefully, like I was made of spun glass and good intentions, then turned its attention to the people who had just threatened its precious cargo. What happened next was less battle, and more natural disaster, with a personal vendetta. Vex moved through the pirates like a crystalline hurricane, not killing them, and this was important, because apparently even in protective rage mode, Vex understood that I probably wouldn't approve of casual murder, but definitely making them regret every life choice that had led to this moment. Pirates went flying, weapons were crushed, armor was shredded, and through it all, Vex kept making these little checking sounds in my direction, like it was saying, "Still okay over there, precious cargo? Don't worry, I've got this handled." The whole thing lasted maybe 3 minutes. When the dust settled, we had a command center full of unconscious pirates, one very satisfied apex predator, and me, Jake Morrison, sitting behind a console wondering how my life had become so surreal. "Well," Rex said, surveying the carnage with obvious approval, "that was efficient." Costas was already taking readings, her scanner beeping frantically. Fascinating. Even in combat mode, Vex maintained constant spatial awareness of Jake's location. Every attack pattern was calculated to minimize risk to its bonded companion. "I wasn't bonded," I protested weakly. "I was just trying not to get stepped on." But even as I said it, I could feel Vex's attention focused on me like a warm crystalline spotlight. It approached carefully, checked me over for injuries with the thoroughness of a worried parent, then made that pleased rumbling sound that meant everything in its universe was exactly as it should be. "Outstanding work, both of you," Rex said, and I could tell he was trying very hard not to smile. "The station is secure, the pirates are neutralized, and nobody died. I'd call that a complete success." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just sat behind furniture and tried not to panic." "Exactly," Rex replied. "You kept Vex focused and calm. If you'd panicked, we might have had a very different outcome." Vex projected an image of me sitting safely while it dealt with threats, radiating approval and contentment. I looked around the command center, at the unconscious pirates, at the smiling faces of the crew, at my apex predator companion, who was now gently grooming my hair with one delicate claw tip. "I'm never going to have a normal life again, am I?" The pleased rumbling sound Vex made in response pretty much answered that question. But you know what? As I sat there being fussed over by a 12-foot crystalline death machine that thought I was the center of the universe, with a salary that could buy a small planet and the grudging respect of a space station full of scientists and military personnel, I realized something. Maybe normal was overrated anyway. 6 months later, I was sitting in what had once been Conference Room Alpha 7, but was now officially designated as the Morrison Vex Diplomatic Suite. The nameplate on the door still made me laugh, partly because of the absurdity and partly because laughing was better than screaming into the void about how completely my life had derailed. The room had been extensively renovated to accommodate what the facilities department delicately called unique spatial requirements. Translation: they'd reinforced everything to handle 12 feet of crystalline apex predator and installed furniture that could survive Vex's helpful rearrangements of my workspace. I was reviewing the morning reports, because apparently I actually had responsibilities now beyond try not to die horribly, when Ambassador Tanaka walked in for our weekly check-in. She'd gotten used to Vex over the months, which meant she only flinched slightly when it turned its glowing attention toward her. "How are we adjusting, Jake?" she asked, settling into the reinforced chair across from my desk. "Well," gesturing to the tablet displaying my morning schedule, "I've got 3 diplomatic meetings today, a consultation with the xenobiology department about Vex's dietary preferences, and apparently I'm supposed to review the safety protocols for the new habitat they're building in Section C. The habitat is for the new specimens arriving next week," Yuki explained. "The council thought it would be wise to have your input, given your unique expertise in interspecies relations." I snorted. "My expertise consists of falling down a lot and accidentally convincing an apex predator that I'm worth protecting. I'm not sure that's transferable to other species." Vex made a disagreeing rumble, and projected an image of me successfully mediating a dispute between 2 of the station's researchers last month. In Vex's version of events, I'd been wise and diplomatic. In reality, I'd mostly just stood there while 2 grown adults argued about lunch schedules until they felt embarrassed enough to work it out themselves. "Nevertheless," Yuki continued, "your bonding with Vex has opened up entirely new avenues of xenobiological research. Costas tells me there are 3 different universities wanting to establish research programs based on your relationship." "Our relationship," I said dryly, "consists of me trying to live my life while Vex makes sure nothing bad happens to me. Yesterday it rearranged my entire office because it decided the lighting wasn't optimal for my health and well-being." This was true. I'd come back from lunch to find my desk moved 3 feet to the left, my filing cabinets reorganized by some logic only. Vex understood, and what appeared to be a small shrine made of polished crystal formations in the corner. When I'd asked about it, Vex had projected images suggesting it was a comfort enhancement for my workspace. "And how do you feel about the living arrangements?" Yuki asked. I considered this. My quarters were now a sprawling complex that took up most of. I had a bedroom that was bigger than my old apartment, a kitchen that Vex had somehow convinced the engineers to equip with both human and crystalline appropriate amenities, and a living area where I could actually relax without worrying about accidentally breaking something valuable. It's nice, I admitted. Weird, but nice. Vex is actually pretty good company once you get past the whole apex predator thing. It's like having a very large, very protective roommate who occasionally brings me gifts. The gifts were an ongoing source of both amusement and mild terror. Vex's idea of appropriate presents included polished metal fragments, interesting rocks from the station's geology lab, and once, memorably, what appeared to be a perfectly preserved flower from the hydroponics bay. The flower had been beautiful, and I'd been genuinely touched until I realized Vex had somehow convinced the entire hydroponics staff to let it wander through their facility unsupervised. The psychological evaluation shows you're adapting well to the arrangement, Yuki said, consulting her tablet. Dr. Martinez says your stress levels have actually decreased since the bonding stabilized. That's because I don't have to worry about anything anymore. Vex handles all the worrying. Someone looks at me wrong, Vex notices and positions itself between us. I forget to eat lunch, Vex reminds me. I stay up too late working, Vex starts making pointed sounds until I go to bed. This was also true. Vex had apparently appointed itself as my personal life coach, health monitor and general supervisor. It was like having a very large, very invested parent, who happened to be made of living crystal and could level a small building if sufficiently motivated. And you're comfortable with the work responsibilities? Yuki asked. I laughed. Yuki, 6 months ago I was a janitor. Now I'm the senior interspecies relations coordinator with an office bigger than some people's houses. A salary that could fund a small colony, and hazard pay that makes me wonder if I should be more worried about my life expectancy. The hazard pay is mostly precautionary, she assured me. The insurance department just wanted to be thorough. Uh-huh. I gestured to Vex, who was currently examining a new delivery of office supplies with the intensity of a bomb disposal expert. My companion there once took apart 3 security drones because they were making sounds it didn't like while I was trying to nap. Precautionary seems appropriate. Vex looked up at its name, and projected a brief image of the offending drones, along with a sense of satisfaction at having eliminated the noise pollution that was disrupting my rest. In Vex's worldview, this had been a completely reasonable response to a clear threat to my well-being. Speaking of which, Yuki said, how do you feel about the upcoming conference? I groaned. Next month, Kepler-7 was hosting the first interspecies bonding symposium, where researchers from across the galaxy would come to study what everyone was calling the Morrison-Vex phenomena. I was expected to present a paper on practical applications of human apex-predator diplomatic relations. I feel like a zoo exhibit, I said honestly. But a very well-paid zoo exhibit with excellent benefits and job security. Vex made a concerned sound and moved closer to my desk, apparently sensing my mild distress. One massive clawed appendage gently patted my shoulder in what had become its standard comfort, the precious cargo gesture. You know what the weirdest part is? I said, absently reaching up to pat Vex's appendage back. I'm actually happy, not just content but genuinely happy. I have a job I'm good at, I'm making a difference in interspecies relations, and I have a companion who thinks I'm the most important thing in the universe. Even though that companion is a 12-foot crystalline apex predator, Yuki asked. Especially because of that, I said, do you know how secure you feel when nothing in the known galaxy is stupid enough to mess with your best friend? Vex rumbled approvingly and projected an image of the two of us in our shared quarters. Me reading while it maintained its eternal vigil over my safety and comfort. In the image we both looked content. So you're staying? Yuki asked. No requests for transfer, no attempts to break the bond. I looked around the office that Vex had carefully optimized for my comfort, at the schedule full of work that actually mattered, at my companion who was now helpfully organizing my desk supplies by some system that made perfect sense to a crystalline mind. Where would I go? I've got the best job in the galaxy, a retirement plan that'll set me up for life, and a friend who'd level half the station if anyone tried to hurt me. Plus, someone has to make sure Vex doesn't accidentally terrify the new researchers. As if summoned by my words, Costas appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand and that familiar gleam of scientific curiosity in her eyes. Jake, perfect timing. I wanted to discuss the behavioral modifications we've observed in Vex's social interaction patterns, and whether you think we should introduce controlled interaction scenarios with the new specimens arriving next week. I sighed and stood up, Vex immediately positioning itself to provide optimal support and protection as I moved. And that, I said to Yuki, is why I'm staying. Someone has to translate between apex predator logic and human scientific curiosity, before someone gets accidentally adopted by something with more teeth than good sense. Vex made what I'd learned to recognize as its amused sound and gently guided me toward the door, ready to supervise whatever new adventure my workday would bring. 6 months ago, I was Jake Morrison, space janitor and professional disappointment. Now I was Jake Morrison, senior interspecies relations coordinator and the most protected human in the galaxy. It wasn't the life I'd planned, But as Vex carefully escorted me down the corridor while Doc Costas chattered excitedly about behavioral patterns and bonding protocols, I realized something important. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming, even if they're 12 feet tall, made of living crystal, and think you're too precious to be allowed out of their sight. Especially then.